Okay, we can get started. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Do we have any oral communications?
None.
Okay, thank you. Review approval of the minutes. Anyone have any questions?
Move to approve.
A second.
Then go ahead.
Okay, all in favor?
Approve 4-0.
And then we have, next item is library relocation options. Presenters Francisco Vargas. Hi Francisco.
Hi,
Welcome.
good afternoon. Trustees, today I'm Francisco Vargas, Management Analyst for Economic Development, and I'm responsible for the city's real property portfolio. Today I'm here to present the temporary library relocation options that were evaluated by city staff. These options being the CCAE Museum, a storefront on Grand Avenue, located on 224-238 East Grand, and option C, the North County Mall, the location that formerly had the Forever 21 by the food court. We will also go over additional costs to consider, and at the end, staff recommendation, which would be to move forward with option C. So the options evaluated by staff are the museum space, the storefront on Grand, and the North County Mall, the third floor by the food court. The major component of it being square footage and being able to accommodate the library and continuity of services. The museum at the Center for the Arts provided 9,695 square feet. The storefront on Grand, 13,500, and the space at the North County Mall, 50,000 square feet. The estimated costs listed in the presentation should be taken as conservative costs. They're just starting. It's a starting point. With the museum space costing $510,420 per year at a minimum. The storefront on Grand, $550,000 per year, plus a tenant improvement evaluation that we have to conduct, being that that building is currently not seismically retrofitted and it's currently out of code. And option C, the cost for the mall being $540,000 per year to begin with. The museum space at the Center for the Arts was not selected due to the space not being able to accommodate the entire collection and staff. Option B, it implies a lot of risk in the timeline. Time is a major factor here, and if move forward with that option, we risk the project not being completed on time. And option C, the North County Mall option, was selected because it can accommodate the entire collection and staff, and the site is move-in ready. Some additional costs to consider are moving costs. Initial bids have come in right now at a minimum $50,000. One thing we have to consider is that the move is two ways: to the temporary site, back to the library as well. There are some components to the moving quotes that we have to consider as well, such as storage of the books, the breaking down of equipment and furniture, fixtures, and equipment that the library would want to take to this temporary site. Estimated furniture rentals such as book carts that could be used to transport books. Initial quotes have come in at about $50,000 per year. Marketing and wayfinding signage, that cost is currently unknown. And costs related to information systems and equipment such as computers, internet access, and all of that, printers. As such, staff recommendation is to move forward with option C at the North County Mall at the site formerly occupied by Forever 21, located next to the food court.
Next to the food court.
Yep.
Are you done with your presentation?
Sorry about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We'll open it up for the board's questions. One of the things that I would like to ask right off the bat is that the Friends of the Library space is very important to the community and to the Friends of the Library. Which space is, I believe that the North County Mall is the best place for that, and I think that's our only option to continue for Friends of the Library, is that correct?
That is correct. We made a site visit to the North County Mall option, and there is space to accommodate the Friends of the Library.
Thank you. Trustees, do we have any questions?
I agree that C is the only logical choice, but why in the world is floor refinishing part of CCA's quote?
Due to increased foot traffic.
Okay.
Mary Beth?
So currently the library, where it's located, it has services and allows for visitors of those that do not have permanent housing right now. So with moving it into more of a privatized location, such as the mall, I'm just curious what that is gonna look like. I know that some of our services will be limited, so I just wanna make sure that they would still be able to receive those services. I anticipate some barriers to that because of the location, but has there been any thought to that?
With regard to the mall location, your services may be limited. That may be based on the fact that because this is a temporary location, and the infrastructure is not your main library infrastructure. So that's why those services may be limited. We are working towards making sure that we have a baseline of services that are available, especially with regard to, for example, the scenic your eligible Wi-Fi system that will be there. When we did the walkthrough earlier today, we initiated those conversations with the Information Systems Department to see what they could provide as far as that's concerned. One of the really nice things about this specific location is there is public transportation directly to the mall. So for those individuals that do not have access to a private or personal vehicle, they can easily use public transportation to get down there. What we also were able to determine is that the mall will be open for the most part the hours that the library is already open. So we're not asking for anything outside of those services. The one small caveat to that is that the mall doesn't open until 10 a.m. The library generally opens at 9 a.m. So as a result, having conversation with Reno and his team, there's a possibility that we may need to adjust that hour just slightly and just bump that back on the end time as well. However, the mall is also very would like to work with us, and that we could potentially open earlier because the doors to the mall do actually open at 9 a.m. in the morning, even though the stores and the mall itself does not actually open until 10 a.m. in the morning. So there is some opportunity for negotiation there.
Okay.
One more question. Reno, you were looking at using the Mathis Center and all that. Is that still in play, or would it all go over to the mall?
We would still consider using, for example, the Pioneer Room would continue acting as a Pioneer Room, and we would have to staff it accordingly for those hours. Most likely, with the shift over to the mall, we would not have, say, the programs in the Mathis Center to the same extent as we would have had if they were being split between the museum space and Mathis. Just because we have so much space now at the mall location that we should be able to accommodate programming space within. And so really what the Mathis Center would be is it would continue to be acting as Pioneer Room space and potentially literacy space. That literacy component is one we would have to have discussion, because literacy, really its core mission is to serve the community in this area. And so moving literacy services down, I have to work with our team. It's just recently that the mall became a spot we were in consideration hub. So we haven't had time to really consider how literacy services would either stay here and use Mathis and their literacy annex, while the bulk of the services shift over to the mall location. But those are the main issues and uses of Mathis space. It's just be less programming than we normally would.
Okay, thank you.
So right now the library is a cool zone during the summer, right? And are the mall owners, I guess, open to that as well?
The mall is considered a cool zone.
Cool zone,
And has
okay.
been for the last
Okay.
several years that I can recall.
Yeah. So with that, right, and regulating our, folks experiencing homelessness, have we talked to the mall about what their policies are with regard to folks coming in and out?
We just met with the management team today to take that tour, so there are certain aspects of the negotiating points and discussions that we have not embarked on as of yet.
Okay. I would be a proponent of having that as a commitment, just because, as Maribel said, folks who are experiencing homelessness use our library a lot. And we want to make sure that, those services are still available to them. The other question I had, Francisco, is you said that the cost associated here was on the conservative side. For me, that means you've inflated the cost to be sure that our expectations are met in the future. Are you saying that, is that consistent, like you expect costs to be less or more than what is listed here?
In regards to cost, I can go back. So for the Center for the Arts, that was the sum of the proposal they sent over.
Okay.
For the storefront on Grand, we expect it to be more.
More,
if
sure.
not double.
Mhm.
And for the option at the North County Mall, that's the sum of the proposal we got back from them.
Oh, okay, great. And the duration of the project, are we assuming a full year in?
We're, in the negotiation process, the city would most likely request a 1-year lease with month-to-month options
After?
thereafter.
Okay.
Francis?
Yeah, it does seem like a lot has changed in the last week
Yeah.
from the workshop last Friday to now. I guess the question I have is just the accessibility of the third floor at the library. Is it near elevators? Is it
There,
easy?
it's located right next to the central elevators,
Okay, that's good.
and it's very accessible.
And it's right next to the food court. It's
Yeah.
really fantastic.
Yeah, no, actually, I'm excited about that.
I was gonna have lunch there, but I had to get back from it.
Do we expect the harvesting of the FF&E to be relatively similar between the museum space and the mall? I know with the museum space there was the reconfiguration of the network situation. Or is that still too early to tell for the mall
So
location?
it's a little too early to tell in either location. In either location, the CCAE galleries museum space or at the mall, we would have to still bring in an entirely new network system. The one at the mall would likely be a larger network system because we can accommodate our full collection with our full complement of staff, whereas at the museum location, it was maybe 20 staff thereabout, a fraction of our collection that would be available. So it's almost an apples and oranges kind of comparison, but there's definitely going to be more expenses associated with the mall space in regard to the IT networking than it would be with the museum space.
Okay, and then I'm not sure if this got touched on with Virginia's question. In regards to having the Friends located with the library at the mall, would there be any concerns from management at the mall about having them selling from their storefront?
That was not necessary, again, it wasn't a part of the conversation that we had. We knew from the workshop, and wanting to make sure that that was a part of this conversation, was to accommodate the Friends in that space, whatever space that we were going to have. That was really important for us. I don't anticipate that being a problem or a challenge.
And during our walkthrough of the space at the mall, we did mention to their general manager the importance of the Friends, and they are aware, and she did not express any resistance to them selling books, and we did let her know that they sell books.
Did you happen to tour the shipping and receiving area? Because the Friends do ship out books.
We do, we did see a freight elevator that went directly into the storefront, which was very nice. As far as the shipping and receiving section, we would not, but what we would likely do is carve out space in the 50,000 square foot location because it is quite large, and in looking at it, there were a lot of opportunity for us to kind of cordon off certain sections to be able to accommodate for their shipping and receiving and being able to use the direct access of that freight elevator.
Do we know if there are any, like booksellers at the mall? Like vendors?
I've walked that mall several times lately, and I have not
You
seen
haven't?
any
Okay.
booksellers
Okay.
besides
Target,
Target.
yeah.
Target, right, okay. They're not gonna care. I just don't wanna, edge out their business.
I don't think they really
It
have.
would just be nice to, if there did exist, to establish a relationship there and just say, hey, we're coming in, very temporary, and then, work stuff out with their friends to push people towards them in the event that they didn't have what our folks are looking for.
Reno, have you thought about the relationship with the Rangers and bringing them into this other location? I'm wondering if there's opportunity for collaboration to support any of our patrons who may need assistance or at the mall earlier than their security may be there or anything like that.
We haven't really had much time to reach out and work with what the ranger presence at the mall would be like, if any, at this point. It's really too early. Right now, it was just a few hours ago we toured the mall. I do know, based on our tour, that the mall has its own security team, but we haven't had a chance to have the conversation with either the rangers or the city to figure out whether the rangers can even come down to the mall, or if they can, what differences there might be in the service. So it's just too early to say at this point.
So let me backtrack a little. So are the Rangers aware that this move is happening? Because I don't know if they have, outside of the scope of the library, if they have other operations or needs for being at the library, and if they've been able to start planning for that.
So we have a close working relationship with the Parks, Lakes, and Open Space Manager, that there are already conversations because they fall within the same department as our Public Works, which is the department that Ed works for, in working with the, working through this process. So I believe they are tangentially recognize that this is kind of going to occur, but they don't know the specifics about how it's going to play out. With the fact that the mall does have their own security, and it is 24 hours, 365, that has an opportunity for us to have the rangers there in a more limited capacity and allow them to perform other functions and duties closer to their patrolling parks.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So in your walkthrough today, was there any, besides the cost, is there any issues that rise to the top that we should be aware of?
I think we still have a lot of questions for the mall space. And again, since it was so early in the process, we don't have, for example, a layout, but they promised us they're going to send us blueprints. And I know the city is also working through the planning department to get us blueprints and plans. That'll answer a lot of our questions, and it'll help with our planning of space and figuring out where can we accommodate the Friends bookstore, where can we have children's section, adult section, etc. But I don't have that yet. So that's our top of our list, is just knowing where we're going to put things. Because from that, it will answer a lot of questions as to what are the costs for moving, what can we accommodate with the move. All that is wrapped up in knowing the actual layouts. And then beyond that, it's really things that we've already discussed, which are how much IT equipment will we have to move over, where are the outlets to accommodate those, can they put in data drops? Those are things that we just don't have any information on yet, but those are the main concerns.
Okay. I don't think we have any further questions. Robert, what would you like from the board?
So what we would need at this point is a recommendation from the board as to which of these particular options that you would like us to move forward with. There will be, ultimately the city council is the one who will decide in which direction that we will move, but your recommendation plays a part into that.
Would anyone like to
I
make
have a question.
Oh, good.
When the city council makes the decision, does that guarantee funding for the library at the mall?
I can speak to the process.
Okay,
real
great.
quickly, if you don't mind,
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Shenik, Director of Economic Development, overseeing community services and real property. So I can speak to the process of what happens next. So we will take your recommendation to closed session with City Council because that allows us the opportunity to hear their feedback on specific negotiation points that they'd like included with whichever space you recommend. They will then authorize us as staff to enter into negotiations for that space, and we'll work with the landlord to do that, and then we'll get to work getting specific costs for other items such as the moving, the information systems, the marketing and signage. And then we'll bring all of those final numbers back to City Council. The anticipated date, I believe, is March 19th, where we will bring a full lease that we've negotiated with the party to council for approval, as well as a request for a budget adjustment that incorporates all of the final costs that we've researched.
I'll make, John, you want to make the motion?
All right, I move that we approve option C.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approved 5-0.
Thank you.
Good job, guys.
Yeah.
Yes, thank
Just
you.
beginning.
Thank you, Francisco. Thank you for everyone that was involved in that today. So we'll move on to item number 3, Building for Library Infrastructure Grant Project. Presenters are Robert Rose.
I'm actually going to invite up Ed Vasquez. He is the project manager specifically for the library infrastructure project, and then we'll tag team this conversation again.
Hello, everyone. So our update, basically going over what we went over last Friday, which I'm sorry I don't have a presentation. There's a schedule I gave out, but the dates on the schedule are pretty straightforward right now. As far as providing an update with plan check status, I am down to 3 comments right now, which is pretty close to approval. One being the planning department, and 2 other comments being electrical, which are minor comments. There were notes missing. Hoping to resolve those this week, which puts me into being able to go out to bid next week, midweek towards the end of the week. So we're being able to stay on schedule and on track with that right now. As far as going out for bid, the dates we have right now is from 2/19 to 4/10, approximately 45 days of bid process. That's still on track. Trying to schedule a library walkthrough, which is going to be with potential or prospective bidders on March 20th. Then bid evaluation, kind of have from 4/14 to 4/18. Trying to get on council agenda for award at the latest would be 5/7, which is May 7th. That's still giving us 10 months of construction, which means we really have to start construction in June, the first week of June, being able to have those full 10-month period. So as far as being able to report, we're on track from the last conversation, yes, we are.
So we're planning to close the library what day for move?
The discussion I had with Robert was we're looking, library relocation would be from 4/14 to 5/14.
So this goes to the lease goes to city council approval March 19th, and then we plan to move April 14th. And we think that we could meet those timelines.
So we're hopeful that we can make those timelines, but however, again, with sometimes the fluidity of construction and the process, we may need to push those back a little bit. However, those are the dates that we are going to strive for. because that will allow the construction team, should they be able to be awarded and start sooner, we want them to be able to start sooner as much as possible.
So it's, everything you've said is pretty much on track with what we discussed last Friday.
As of today, yes, we are.
Okay.
Francis?
I don't mean to get too far ahead in the future, but we had talked previously at meetings about the parking lot needing to be up to code for the library to potentially reopen. How does that look in this timeline? I know it's further out in the future, but I wouldn't want to see a reopening potentially blocked by something like that.
Absolutely. That is something I think I mentioned previously that our Director of Public Works is working toward. And so he is the one who will be heading that particular project as much as possible. We do have some time. Obviously, once we close down, we will have the full year to be able to do it. However, it wouldn't want to be done while construction is going in and out of the building. So it would be more towards the end of that particular process. We can get an update from him a little bit later to have that conversation with him to see where he is in that process. The one question that is still outstanding.
And how would that approval process work as well?
That would also go to City Council because we would have to allocate funds toward it. And that may be one of those items that might be included in that conversation and request for a budget adjustment in the March 19th, or it may be pushed back and coordinated with the bid of the award contract to City Council. So those are the two dates that we're potentially looking at right now to incorporate that.
Okay. So City Council should be aware that there could be extra costs
Absolutely.
at the end of this. Okay.
So the library is going to be closed for a month while we move.
It was April 14th through
May 14th.
May 14th. The last day the library will be open is April 12th.
Okay, and what is the communications plan to get folks aware of that?
So we are working with the communications team to determine our marketing and communications campaign as we go forward. We are likely going to be launching that in early March. That gives us about roughly 45 days to share that information with the public. I'll be meeting with them again. It's either next week or the week after. I don't recall what's on my calendar. I do apologize for that. But we'll be meeting with them again. One of the stopping points in the previous couple of conversations I've had with them is wanting to know a specific location that we are actually moving toward. And so now that you have recommended option C, which is the mall, and then next week when it goes to City Council in closed session, should they affirm that decision or that recommendation that you've made, then that gives us a much more clear process to be able to move toward and communicating that to the public. And we'll be doing a variety of different things. It will be communication on our website, it will be social media, it will be a printed campaign using A-frames in the library and in the library parking lot. It will also involve the use of the press. So through press releases to be able to kind of communicate this as much as possible. We want to blanket that conversation as much as we possibly can, because the worst thing that we ever want to have happen is someone to roll up to the library on, April 20th and go, why is the library closed? Oh my gosh, what's going on, right? So we want to make sure that we have over-communicated with the public as much as we possibly can.
So, same comment I made last Friday. I think we ought to be striving towards getting it done sooner. I understand, you tell them 5/14, and maybe we happily surprise everybody by completing everything a week or hopefully earlier. We don't have enough information on how things are going to be done, especially the IT and the logistics of moving things, to make those estimations now. But I would encourage everybody to try to get this done sooner than 5/14. A month's a long time to close a library.
It is. Yeah, we understand that, and we understand that the library is an important service to this community, and it is an important, important feature and an important function to this community as well. And we will speed up that process as much as possible. I'll work with Reno and his team in making sure that we are prepared for the move. We will be hiring movers that will move stuff into the new location. And then we'll be working with our IS department, our information systems department, to make sure that they are initiating everything that needs to be done on the technology side to be able to allow us to open as soon as possible.
Thank you.
I may have missed it because I missed the Friday meeting. How are we dealing with, like, our policies and folks who would need to be bringing back a book during that time frame? Because we have a 3-week window.
Right, that's an excellent question, and that's not a conversation that we've started with Reno and
Okay.
what that looks like. I can tell you that we did have a conversation with the mall management team,
Mhm.
and they're open to the idea of allowing us to place our book drops
Oh.
in to associated parts of the mall, in the front side of the mall, and then also in the back side of the mall. So there would be an opportunity for us to be able to place those book drops there, to be able to bring those books during that temporary relocation period.
Is there a potential to have a book drop more close to where the library is currently, that staff could go then and
Well, will the Pioneer Room be open?
oh, yeah,
Yeah.
right, people,
So I'll mention, we have a number of options as far as during the partial closures and between
Yes.
reopening. So we can either let the public know that we'll be closing and they can just hold off on returning the books. Again, we don't have late fines anymore.
Right.
So that is an option. So we
Mhm.
can just waive or extend the checkout times.
Mhm.
We can also just keep using the current drop boxes until we move them. And then staff can still pull them and then either move them to the temporary location or recirculate them. So there's still options there
Mhm.
because the library won't be fenced in
Yeah.
yet.
okay.
So those functions would still be happening. It's just to allow staff time to be able to prepare all the collections is why we have to close it. Otherwise,
That makes sense.
we would be having people checking things out as we're trying to store them and move them. And also furniture would be an issue.
Mhm.
But we have a number of different options during that temporary closure, that month essentially, where, we can either see what works best, and we haven't gotten into discussions just yet, because it might have been a little bit different depending on where we were.
Mhm.
But we do have options.
I think I'd just be interested to see what the plan is for, like, how you guys are going to set up your infrastructure and get through to the 5/14 open date. Because like John was saying, the faster we can do that, the better. Obviously, there's a lot to put into place, but there might be opportunity to kind of do what we did during COVID, where people are still able to put books on hold and then, come and pick it up at the front of the storefront.
And we have started that discussion. The logistics of it would be, most likely it would have to be a limited selection of the collections that we can keep in an area that isn't going to be heavily impacted.
Mhm.
So for example, new items, like new books,
Mhm.
we might be able to have a section where they can choose those,
Yeah.
but it would be very limited. Otherwise, we get into staff are pulling books for patrons, and we're having them hold it while we're also trying to move those books off of the shelves onto, say, the moving carts.
Mhm.
And then it becomes an issue of can we even locate the items we're looking for
Mhm.
for those requests.
Mhm.
I'll also mention we still have the option of using Linked Plus,
Mhm.
right, our library loan service.
Yeah.
So during that time, we could rely more heavily on Linked Plus
Mhm.
to have people call out for those books while the books that we actually have are being transported and prepped for transportation. So we do have a number of different levers we can
Okay.
pull.
Mhm.
I think from the board, as we discuss it, if you have any preference for how you would want that to go, like I said, if we want to continue some sort of service during that, we can do it, but it'll be very limited.
Mhm.
And it just really depends on how that move goes and how involved staff are with the move.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Any questions?
I just want to make sure, it's more of a comment, regarding the book drops. So I'm not too familiar with what you mean, like the front and the back end of the mall. But I would I would ask you to consider that at least one of those two is accessible, like via drive-through, right? Because some families, if they're just, trying to drop off, they're not gonna, I don't wanna sometimes have to unbuckle my kid and, have to go all the way over there. And so I hope that's part of the consideration when we're trying to select where we're put the book drops.
We'll include that in the conversation that we have with mall management, because ultimately, we can propose a location, but it is their decision on to what they will allow us to do.
Yeah.
Robert, it may be possible that you and the city develop and Reno develop the communication plans and roll it out before our next meeting. So
That is because your next meeting is not until March 13th. And so the plan was to actually start the marketing campaign and communication to the public that first or second week of March. So we should have it completely rolled out by then. And then I can provide you with far more details at our next meeting.
okay, if you could please send us a preview before it gets sent out to the public, we would really appreciate that. Over email is fine. Thank you.
And could I recommend too that the communication plan include how our patrons can access material while the library is closed?
That would be something that I would need to work with Reno on.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the project? Okay, thank you, Robert and Ed. Appreciate it. We'll move on to the next item, which is community workshop report. This is Reno and I can provide an update. We had our second workshop meeting last week on February 7th, and we held it at the library. Some of the topics included temporary closure, location, project timeline, impact of the Friends of the Library. And so we did spend a lot of time on answering the community questions and collaborating. And and we reviewed the timeline with Ed and Robert. Were also in attendance on the board. It was Francis, Maribel, John, and I attended. Rena, would you like to provide any other comments?
Surprisingly, a lot of what we covered on Friday has changed and is no longer
Fair.
what I would say necessarily relevant. At that time, the main discussion was considering the museum space as the prime location. As we've all heard today, that is not the case. So a lot of the discussion around that is no longer necessarily relevant, but essentially boiled down to, at the museum, we would have had to reduce how many of our collections were available, and we would have to prioritize a lot more with what we would have offered at that space, including more of the combination of using programs there and also at the Mathis Center. With a singular location now at this point, that's more of a moot point. Of course, we heard from our friends and foundation members, especially the Friends, voiced their importance, and both from their perspective and from our perspective, why it's valuable to have them at wherever we're at for the library, so that way they can continue to fundraise and support both our programs and longer term goals. And of course now with the mall space, we can clearly, I can tell you for sure, we can accommodate them. What that'll look like is to be determined, but that is for sure an option. Let's see, what else we talked about. As we've heard today, the project timeline was updated. That we first let the public know and the board know that the timeline had been switched back due to issues with the time needed for the bid, as we've already heard today. We did not get into very much into the uncovered aspects of the grant. Pending more solid quotes is essentially what we're waiting on. But we do have some updates, I think, coming up, but those weren't really discussed. We spent the bulk of the time talking about the temporary move, what is needed for that, and at that time, what the assumptions were for that move. Anything else that those who attended recall?
I mean, I think you summarized it quite well. I'd say the theme from both community workshops I've attended has been, what is the plan? And then what's going to happen with the space, collections, Friends of the Library. And those are all starting to come into play now. And I think we see now the answers to those questions pending approval beyond us. So I thought that was a good summary, Reno and Virginia.
Were there folks there who were not part of the Friends? Any community members who don't?
Yes, there was community members in attendance, a lot of Friends of the Library members, and the Library Board Foundation board members were there.
And library staff.
And library staff,
Yeah.
correct.
And I'll mention that there was at least a couple questions that weren't from the Friends, one of which I remember was related to how we will choose which collections would be selected for the temporary location. Just so everybody knows, if we were to pick a smaller section than the mall, which it doesn't seem that's the case, we would have used Library IQ in our data to prioritize the most popular and well-used items. Now that we more or less can bring everything over, less of an issue, but we still use the data to help us highlight those items and how many items we have when calculating, for example, how much temporary shelving we might need. That goes all into the floor planning that we'll be doing in the next coming days once we have the plans.
So we discussed the next meeting would focus more on the unfunded items, and because we need more information, more time for that. And that will be the main focus of the next workshop meeting, which I have an action item to coordinate with Reno the best dates in early March. So before our next board meeting, we should have another workshop meeting.
And I just wanted to add that regarding the Friends or anybody who's going to try to help us out with a lot of those unfunded items, they did make a point that they would like us to keep them up to date as much about the project, the renovation project, because just like we're trying to anticipate all these unanticipated costs or unfunded costs, they will also have to encounter that. So I think they will have now storage space, so they may not need to worry about some of those items, right? They will need to look into their own moving costs, etc. So that may impact their ability, whatever they need to move, because they have
That would not be
the
covered
workroom.
by the move costs of moving to the new facility?
Because the Friends aren't technically a part, they were their own independent organization. Some costs fall outside of that.
So moving their bookshop will be not borne by the city?
That is something I cannot answer.
Okay, but that's your understanding? Reno?
That was my
Yeah,
understanding.
they're a 501c3 by themselves.
Yeah.
As is the
Foundation.
foundation.
Yeah, so I believe the way Robert explained it at the workshop was more of they are allowed to be in city library space with the understanding that they're going to be conducting their 501c3 duties, to sell books, to raise funds, and in being allowed to be in that space, it's like a beneficial relationship where they're going to return some of those funds back to help with a lot of our programming, but they would have to borne their own costs because they don't necessarily fall within the library staff and materials. So that is whatever those costs arise for them. And I imagine, for the Friends, that may limit their ability to provide assistance to us for those unfunded items.
And where we're able to, we can help. As was mentioned in the workshop, Robert mentioned that, for example, when we
Storage.
have surplus amounts of shelving, or the stacks that we will no longer use, those can be set aside for the Friends to then install in the new location, either the temp location or when we're done with the renovation. They're not going to have to buy new shelves for that. They can use our repurposed shelves or the ones they currently have. So there's things like that where there is some leeway, but to the specifics of what will be covered by the city for the Friends, that I'm not able to answer.
Sure. Do you know if there's a contract that exists between the Friends and the library?
There is not, from what I understand, a memorandum of understanding.
There's not.
There's not.
Okay.
And then I was just reminded, there is one cost, because I did mention earlier that we should be able to move all the stacks, all the collection items to the mall. That is pending one question, which is to ensure that the mall can support the weight of all the collections. I don't necessarily anticipate that, but I am not a structural engineer, so I can't say for sure it won't be an issue. But that is something just a question mark right now.
And that is because it's on the 3rd floor.
Correct.
Yeah,
Should be okay.
should be okay theoretically, but I really don't know.
Who's responsible for doing that assessment?
So that'll be something that'll be a conversation between the city and the owners of the mall to make sure that as part of that negotiation process, they can accommodate our needs.
And this wasn't discussed at the workshop, but has a library ever been in a mall before?
I don't think this library has, but there's plenty of libraries like nationwide that have been in mall locations. I myself have worked in several systems that we've done this where due to, in one case it was almost the exact same thing. It was rebuilding the entire library, and during that year plus it was at a mall location. So a lot of these questions aren't new to us. It's just new to this particular instance and how this mall wants to do it. But there's plenty of examples, both run by LSNS and outside of LSNS, where we've had library locations in malls or other commercial like zones. And typically, people tend to like them.
Have you guys thought about like the food and drink policy being so close to the food court now?
It has been mentioned now that we've toured.
Yeah.
I think part of it is, it's already part of our code of conduct.
Yep.
And post renovation, we were already anticipating having an area for food. And so we could mirror that setup in the new temporary location to get staff and the public used to the fact that, yeah, we can have some snacks or some drinks, but there's rules associated with that. So it's not a major concern. Like I like to tell staff, we don't control what people do when they take the books home. And so if they're eating soup next to their books, that's the risk they're gonna take when we open the books and we charge them for it. Same thing applies if you're eating and you've got your books out. If we see you eating and we see you spilling, you now owe for what you've done to that book.
Will there be an opportunity for us to tour the mall?
I can't answer that,
Okay.
but we can certainly ask for that.
Okay.
No other questions? Reno, can you just remind me, do you attend all of the Friends of the Library board meetings?
Yes.
Okay.
With
And-
rare exceptions where I'm out, but monthly I'm usually the first person after they get settled.
Okay, and so you provide these renovation updates to them? And
Correct. I provide as much information as I have in that moment to the friends.
Okay, because I was just thinking, to be clear, we're making sure that they have space at the new location, but I'm not even sure if they want to be open during the time that the library is closed, so I just didn't ask personally myself, so I'm just saying, I'm not sure if they're interested.
I'll mention, and I can't speak for them, but I'll mention that we have discussed whether it would be open or not, and it's really been a discussion of how much space we can offer them. Because if we could only offer them a limited, say, a couple bookshelves,
Right.
and we can't offer them a space for them to store or prepare the items, that's a very different scenario than where we're currently at, where we can say, yeah, we can match the amount of space and we can give you a storefront and we can give you a workroom. That's a very different question for them.
Right.
And since we've just learned this, I don't know quite where they're at, but I would suspect that this is a better development.
Yeah. Okay, perfect, sounds good, thank you. Great, if there are no other questions, we'll move on to the next agenda item. Thank you, Reno. So we can start with the monthly statistical report.
Let me just pull that up, because I pulled that up from the main site.
This is my house, this from the Friends is
Where's my mouse?
This is from them. So, but they'll figure that out, because new things have changed.
They want to write.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
That would be amazing.
We should get them to tell us that.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't need it preloaded. So I just pull it up from here. All right, it doesn't let me zoom on that one, but that's okay. All right, we're gonna start off with our stats for the month. And excuse that, I scroll. All right, I don't have any major points to make about the statistics for this month. I will say the trend in checkouts looks dreary as you see it going down, but I'll say that back in January we have gone back up. So we've gone back up to closer to 40,000. So a lot of the checkout decrease has to do with the fact that in November and December we have a lot of days when we're closed, and we have the holidays. So that's typical to impact checkouts, or when we're less hours open, less time for people to come in and check out the items. E-materials have started to go back up. So specifically with Overdrive, it's not seen here, but our Overdrive has gone up and has increased. Hoopla, of course, has stayed static because that is capped, and we are working on getting that in alignment with last session's recommendations for Hoopla. Beyond that, the rest of the stats are more or less as expected for the sessions. Any questions or anything you would like more information on for the stats for this last few months?
I remember when we had 2 meetings ago, when we had, I think it was last meeting, the Hoopla discussion, you were going to have staff reach out to the ones that would be affected, that were outside the zip codes. How is that process going?
We are a little bit behind, I'm going to be honest. We have identified the members that we have to reach out to, but we have not emailed them yet. Mostly because I don't want to do that until we have an informational page on the website and we have planned marketing for letting everybody know that doesn't check their email all the time. What I've found in the past that even if we reach out to the Hoopla emails, that doesn't necessarily mean that they'll read it or notice that we're telling them that they have to come in to get a card. And so we have to coordinate a good plan for, say, our next, which would be March's newsletters, to also coincide.
I thought we were doing this, the changeover to who's allowed on it on March 1st.
That is still likely, but we might have to push that back.
Well, if you push it back, how far do you think you'd have to push it back?
At most a month, but not more than that. I think it'd probably be less. Now we can really move it forward. Like I could have it sent out next week, but it would be just to those users, and then it would take another week to really get like a full campaign done for the rest of the public.
Well, the sooner we can do this, the sooner we can improve
The
our
users.
service to the people who live and work in Escondido. So,
Yes.
I think another concern too about delaying it is if we push it past the 1st of March, there's only so much time that they will have to be able to get into the library before we close it down.
Yeah.
So I can see a lot of dissatisfaction of, I have to get a library card, but I'm not able to go in and actually do that. So if we do need a push back, I feel that we may need to push it till after we relocate. Which again, wouldn't be ideal, just it runs counter to what John just.
yeah, well, we've got people who live and work in Escondido who can't use Hoopla because people outside, way outside our
Yep.
normal frame are sucking up all the dollars.
Mhm.
So,
And that will likely be a place people go when they can't go to the library, and so they'll get even more
Right.
upset.
Yes.
Yeah.
yes,
And for that whole month that the library is closed, the physical location, the online services will still be available. So
Yes.
will there be a rush for more online services?
yeah, so I think it really behooves us to get the Hoopla people people using Hoopla who are going to be cut off done sooner versus letting it go too much further. For all the reasons that they pointed out.
We can certainly push it forward, and it'll be a little bit messier than I would recommend, but it can definitely be done in time for that March 1st deadline.
So can I hear a little bit more about, so if we rushed it, or, you know, try to meet that March 1st deadline, do you feel that it's messy because first we're just gonna send out like targeted messaging and then the whole campaign, and you would prefer that all of it gets sent out? I'm just trying to understand a little bit.
Correct. That's more the approach I would prefer, but like you said, we have the list of emails from Hoopla of who it is. And so we can send out a blast email to all of them with the message of, this is the cutoff, this is why, these are the next steps you can take if you wanna retain service if you're eligible. And then we can, following that and kind of parallel with that, prepare more of like the social media campaign so people know, and we have a website we can direct them to and say, this is the rationale. Just like when we instituted the caps, we wanted to have a website where we can direct people and we can align all our social media towards that, and also have it ready for staff to be able to answer those questions. We can play a little bit of catch up if the priority from the board is really to make sure that that deadline is hit. That is doable. It's just,
Yes.
either way, people are not gonna be happy. So it just depends on which way we make people unhappy, and we can certainly meet that deadline if that is what the goal is.
I think that's our preference.
I think so too.
Yeah,
I think it's important.
yeah, I think we all feel it's important to try to do your best to meet March 1st.
That's doable. We can, and once we have that set out, I'll send you all an email letting you know that it's been done and what it looked like.
Okay, 2 questions. So one, with our March 1st target to send out that, to start that campaign, and with the city marketing campaign about the relocation, right? It sounds like this one's gonna go out sooner. I sort of want the Hoopla campaign to indicate something about the renovation, but I also don't wanna get ahead of ourselves. You know, I don't wanna start sending that out before the city has a chance to. Part of that is because I would want those folks to, you know, they have that month and 12 days or so to get into the library so that they don't delay that process.
And there might be some method internally, we work with staff, where it doesn't have to be them coming in
Yeah.
physically.
Well, it wasn't a huge number of
No.
patrons that have to be reached out to.
Correct. It's under 1,000.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the second part, kind of following Francis's comment, should the board be thinking about, or Reno, about increasing of the digital availability during that month that we're gonna be closed to compensate? Not necessarily for Hoopla, because we know that that can skyrocket pretty quickly, but definitely Overdrive, or any other programs that we have, maybe increasing that to compensate for what won't be able to be checked out physically.
Yes, I think we've already started training staff, and that's been a goal to get them more proactive in monitoring the Overdrive in particular stats. So we have a number of ways of purchasing items, both short-term and longer-term on Overdrive to increase access and to meet demand. So for example, we've been having our staff make sure that we have a holds quota and holds ratio that is even better than 1 to 4, especially for the popular titles. Our goal is for like the best sellers to have a wait time as close to 0 as possible. Sometimes we're limited in that some book publishers don't offer books in the format or lease license that allows for that. So for example, there might be a new bestseller that we can only get physically. We can't get it online, or it can be online, but it's only 1 copy per user and it costs $100. We can try to get more of those, but we're trying to do a balancing of, if the model allows for us to get, sometimes they'll let us get 100 checkouts, and that'll cover all the holds plus the next couple of months, and there's no wait time. Not all the books are available in that kind of model, and so we have to play that balancing act to make sure that the funds go as far as they can while having the biggest impact in that moment. So for example, during closure, we would direct staff to be extra vigilant and watching, what's being held, are there new items, can we increase certain copies in the digital collection, and more recently we've been really pushing staff to promote the alternative platform called Palace, because Palace also benefits from having purchasing from the state to fulfill especially popular audiobooks and ebooks. So that's an extra, and then all our collections from Overdrive are currently also appearing in Palace. So it's a good alternative for those that want to see if my audiobook isn't in Overdrive or Hoopla isn't accessible, trying out Palace.
Okay, I think we're
Okay.
good on stats.
I'll quickly go over the strategic plan goals. This month we're covering activities from November through January under the Embracing Emerging Services. This is one of the longer strategic plan goals. There's not much that you don't already know. Let's see if there's anything I want to highlight. I do want to highlight, as I mentioned here, we're expanding. Recently we've expanded Palace to kind of as a way to help, I don't want to say replace, but supplement what was available in Hoopla. And we're slowly starting to get more users there. It's not nearly at the same level as what we have with Hoopla, but as more people become familiar with it as an alternative, we are optimistic that its use will go up. We were going from, say, 5 downloads a month, now we're up to 40, so we're slowly gaining users as they become aware. We just recently completed our winter reading challenge. I don't have the stats on that because it finished just last week, but I look forward to giving you some updates from the winter reading challenge, and now we're preparing in the very early stages for a summer reading challenge, which will be right in the middle of that move to the temporary location. We continue to apply to grants, and I do have some updates on that. So that's related to our introduction of emerging services or innovative services. This week, likely tomorrow, not listed here, but we are going to be putting out phone charging kiosks in the library on the 1st and 2nd floors. There's a total of 3 of them, and that's going to be helping people charge their phones and also reduce safety concerns related to unsupervised devices and people plugging things in and sitting on the floor. So it's all in that effort. And yeah, we continue with other programs, and of course we continue looking for outside funding for those fun technologies and equipment to enhance what we have as base library services. Yes?
Cute new furniture in the children's area.
Oh, did you see it?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's really
fun.
cute, so check it out next time you're there.
Any questions for the strategic goals?
Okay, we can move on to the director's report.
Oh,
Oh, you wanna?
I did want to include this, so at the request of John, we did include the library trust, so I have placed that into our statistical section. As you can see here, there's a beginning balance of the trust. main changes from last are the earnings, which are small compared to the total amount of the trust. And then of course down here, so right now you have the beginning balance here, and this is how much is available to the Board of Trustees for those unfunded items or wherever else you would want to allocate funds in the future. As a reminder, the budgets up here have already been allocated to either what you see here, so it's either a specific donation or projects. And these are, for example, this $20,000 was used for a match for the Play for All grant to buy the lovely furniture you've mentioned in the children's space. And so in theory, these are all approved by the city. In this case, it's Robert that has the approval process for these based on my recommendation. And of course, your recommendations. Although in theory, these ones were already pre-approved by you, the trustees, or past boards for budget use. I do not have the ability to answer many questions about this, but if you have questions, please let me know.
I guess the question I would have is, if the library's closed for a month, could any funds here be allocated towards the online services for the library?
Yes, but we have been discussing like using these funds for any unfunded items, so it just depends on what we decide is most important when we cover that at the next workshop meeting.
Sounds good.
Yeah, typically, the monies have always been spent on things, whether it be furniture, books.
Data storage.
And then, didn't we approve some money for a subscription service for the Pioneer Room for?
Data storage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for storage, yeah. That's about the only thing we've done that's been electronic.
Any other questions on this? Thank you, Rita, and John for thinking of providing that update.
All right, so I have good news and bad news for my first part of the director's report. So we did apply for a grant from the Carnegie Foundation, and we made it to the part where we were already filtered out, and we were in the top 60 candidates. So we did submit a concept paper. But as of today, which was a week after I'd written this, they have informed us that we did not move on to the next section of the grant. But they will keep us in their files in case there's any other funding opportunities that do match our needs or might be aligned with what we provide here at Escondido. So a little disappointing, but we'll keep trying to look for alternative sources for both those unfunded items for the renovation and also for enhancements in general for the library and its services. So this is just one example. We were optimistic, but unfortunately there were other competitive applications, I'm sure, that better aligned with the Carnegie Foundation's goals. Okay, so you've already heard this about the hoopla, but staff update, as I like to include, we do have a new staff member in the Pioneer Room. Again, this is our goal to enhance what is offered through the Pioneer collections, and so they'll be helping a lot our archivists to further enhance what is digitized and also access to the room for genealogy drop-ins in our hours as well. And last but not least, we've already mentioned that we're a little behind on the hoopla transition, but based on your direction, we'll push that forward as soon as we can to meet that March 1st deadline. And other than that, some highlights from the past month. Second Saturday concert continues to be popular. Succulent Swap again, very popular with 90 attendees. And Jeopardy, this is our second round of trying to host our trivia nights, and smaller crowd than the last one, which was Halloween themed, but we still had a good enthusiastic crowd of 10 attending this one. Pioneer Room highlights. It was nice to see that they've gotten some items from a Denny's restaurant, so scrapbooks from local businesses are a nice way of cataloging the local history, because a lot of people might remember going there. There's also entire collections of just menus from especially local collections. So building this type of item might seem a little strange, but it does capture an aspect of living in Escondido that is otherwise forgotten. So we were happy to see those donated to the Pioneer Room. And last but not last least, our line dance performance, which we tend to have every year. Again, there's a correction, it was actually more than 200 attendees were in attendance for the line dance. I was basing it on photos because the stats weren't in at the time, but 200 people, and we've started really pushing paid marketing on Facebook and Instagram to promote especially these big events, and we are clocking and seeing more attendance and a varied attendance than some past as a result. So we'll hopefully have a good report on how the marketing efforts have changed or impacted attendance once we have a little bit more data from these events. And that wraps up my report for today.
Thank you, Rena. We can move on to the trustee library use report. I can start. I just want to really commend you and the staff for the attention and the visibility that you guys are acknowledging Black History Month. Just a few years ago, there was no events planned for our community, and I can easily spot 3 that the library has planned for this month, so I really appreciate the visibility and attention to that. And also the bookcasing that's at the front, I loved it. I attended the Jean Perry Ensemble on February 1st, which was the first day of Black History Month, and it was fabulous. It was very entertaining, and my husband and I had a good time and loved it. And I know that there was another event, I think, last night, and then there is the dancers.
Yeah, the drum
dancers,
yeah.
Yeah, at the end of this month, I think. So great job on that, and I really thank you and the staff for making sure that that happens for our community. John, do you want to go?
Yeah, I've been reading a specific periodical that the library has. It's a weekly finance thing called Barron's. And it's just nice to have it at the library, so I don't have to pay $6.
I have continued working on tracing my family's lineage through the genealogy websites. And I wasn't able to go to the genealogy drop-in this past week or so, but I hope to do so, I think it's like next week or something. So still working my way through that.
Yeah, I want to thank you, Reno, too, because the dramatic difference in stuff that happened at the community workshop that was discussed to this week. So I imagine it's been a busy week for you and staff, and I'll commend you for that. And then library stuff, went to the Love Esco Day. Library had a booth there. That was incredible to see at the California Center for Arts. Just the library being the heart of all of the participation there. A lot of people were walking around with library swag. That was nice to see. And attended the workshop, and then I had to leave the last library board meeting early to go to the Mathis Center because I take Taekwondo classes with my kids there. And we wanted to go, and we didn't want to miss it, and I had to miss the last 30 minutes of the board meeting. So I just wanted to be on public record for a while. I went from one went from one library thing to another library thing.
I have 2 things. I finally made it to the succulent swap. It was super cool. I was very meticulous in like bringing things from my yard to put out, and I've discovered I have very rare succulents because it was like vultures. Everybody just like went towards it, and I felt great. But I also came home with a couple. I planted them. They're doing great in the backyard. The second thing is my husband recently went into the library again for the first time in a long time. He wanted to get an art history book. He brought it home, he's studying it, and he noticed on the receipt, as did some of our friends, that at the bottom it tells you how much money you've saved, right? Oh, yeah. And they thought that was the coolest thing. And so I was like, well, wait a minute, because I can show you my last receipt, which has, you know, a lot more books on it. And so we compared how much money each of us has saved. And I saved a lot more, so.
Which means you can spend more.
Exactly. There you go, exactly.
Good. Well, thank you everyone for attending the meeting. Thank you, Reno, for all your work, and we will adjourn.